forget, introduce everyone. So good evening and welcome. I'm Jean McKnight, co-chair of this Housing Plan Working Group. And this open meeting of the Needham Housing Plan Working Group is being conducted remotely, consistent with current state regulations, and is being recorded. Although public access to this meeting is provided via Zoom, this meeting will not have public comment. And first, I will go around and introduce members of the Housing Plan Working Group. I think I can confirm by looking at the Zoom screen that we do have a quorum. And I will go by the list that's on our agenda. And so when I say your name, respond orally so that we can hear you, that you are here. First, co-chair of the Housing Plan Working Group, Natasha Espada.
Present.
And then Emily Cooper, who is a citizen at large.
Present.
Ed Cosgrove, who serves on our Board of Health.
Present.
I don't see Carol Fischetti, who's on the Finance Committee, but we'll hope she joins us later. Heidi Frail, a member of our Select Board.
Present.
Helen Gregory, who serves on our Council on Aging.
Present.
Oscar Mertz, a citizen at large appointee.
Present.
I don't see Marcus Nelson. Oh, here he is. I see Marcus Nelson's name and a square. Are you able to respond, Marcus?
Yes, I am present. I'm just going back to a room so I can turn my camera on.
Very good. And Michael O'Brien, and Marcus Nelson is a member of our Select Board. Michael O'Brien of the School Committee.
Present.
I thought I saw Ed. No, I guess not. So Ed Scheidler is not with us right now. No, am I wrong?
Ed Cosgrove is here.
Yes, I did introduce Ed Cosgrove, but I thought I saw Ed Scheidler, and perhaps I'm mistaken. Rhonda Spector. And Rhonda's good. Rhonda is also a citizen at large. And now I also want to introduce our planning department and town staff. We have with us our planning director, Lee Newman.
Present.
Our housing specialist, Karen Sunerborg.
Present.
And our assistant planner, Alex Klee.
Present.
All right, and please be aware that others may be able to see you and hear you. Anything that you share or state will be a matter of public record. This meeting is being recorded and has been advertised so that members of the public can tune in on Zoom to see and hear. And all supporting materials for this meeting, including the agenda, are available on the town's website, www.needham.gov/housing plan 2021. What I'd like to actually do first is accept our minutes of the December 8th meeting. And I think it's worthwhile doing that first because those minutes set out in the various substantive issues that were focused on at that meeting that called for changes in the housing plan working group that then our staff went ahead and made in the plan. So I hope you've had an opportunity to read the minutes, and I ask if there is a motion to accept the minutes of December 8, 2022.
So moved.
The motion from Ed Carsgrove to accept the minutes. Do I have a second? And a second, Rhonda Spector. Any discussion before we go for the vote? Okay, then, I'll just go around the board as I see you, to ask for the vote. Heidi Frail,
Yes.
Oscar Mertz,
Yes.
Ed Cosgrove,
Yes.
Rhonda Spector,
Yes.
Michael O'Brien,
Yes.
Emily Cooper,
Yes.
Natasha Espada,
Yes.
Helen Gregory,
Yes.
and I am yes, so the minutes are accepted. So the purpose of this meeting is to vote on our final housing plan. And I realize that the housing plan was sent out later in this week than we had hoped. But it was a lot of work to put the housing plan together. And I know that left you not as much time as you would have desired to review it. But we did get a few comments for changes that we will discuss. So we can entertain a motion for motion to approve the housing plan, even if there are some changes and it's clear what they are, and that staff can go ahead and make those changes after our vote. So let me mention the changes or suggestions that did come in the past day or two. Oscar Mertz provided some introductory language for Appendix 7. And Appendix 7 is the one that has all of the maps that show the proposed rezoning to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. But there was no text in Appendix 7. It was simply maps. In the plan itself, there was a reference, see maps in Appendix 7. But I thought that the addition of introductory language in Appendix 7 itself was very helpful. And so unless someone has some objection or wants to see the language on the screen, I would ask that our motion to approve the plan also include the addition of the introductory. There's an introductory paragraph simply saying the following Needham zoning maps have been created to graphically represent the proposed zoning map changes described in the zoning lists on page 36, 38. It's possible the page references will change. And the new maps show that the majority of the zoning reform is concentrated in the Needham neighborhoods geographically located near 3 of the MBTA stations, referring to that as the zone or the spine. This zone or spine includes the more densely built parts of town with a mix of commercial, institutional, municipal, and residential uses with a range of lower to higher density building types. And then beyond that introductory is a page that says MBTA district concept map of MBTA station neighborhoods. And that's particularly to explain the map that's, I'll hold it up, but you may remember it. The one that shows the spine, that shows everything at a glance, which I think in our prior presentations, for example, to the select board and at a community meeting, were very helpful to just be able to show that at a glance. And this does, what this page does is just say what's shown on that plan. So I won't go and read every word of that entire page, but it just talks about group 1, group 2, group 3, and what the MBTA criteria is in the guidelines that we complied with in creating these recommendations. So is everybody satisfied that we can include that verbiage in Appendix 7? Good, no objection. Okay, then in our vote, we'll add that. The other comment came from, excuse me, Rhonda Spector, who wanted to add an introductory paragraph. And she provided some wording for the introductory paragraph. And Karen Sunneberg, I was reviewing the plan myself, and I did see some changes to the introductory paragraph. Were the recommendations that Rhonda made actually already incorporated? Probably not, because that came in just this morning.
No, of course not. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wrapped up the stuff I was doing in
Right.
Monday. So
There
no,
were
I did-
some changes made, though, two new red line paragraphs at the very beginning of the
yes, there
executive
was a
summary.
recommendation to move the strategies up in front of kind of background information. I remember that Rhonda had provided some language back when on the first several paragraphs, first page of the executive summary,
Mhm.
but NHA language was kind of moved up to the top. I mean, I think everybody was satisfied with Rhonda's paragraph. I mean, I
Mhm.
thought it was fine. It's just a matter of replacing that with the existing paragraph.
All right, so
Not heavy lifting.
I indicated, yes, that I thought Brenda's summary was good. And what would that, and so what that would do, Karen, would be to substitute the paragraphs that Rhonda provided for the two that are shown on page 1 in red line? Or would they go before those two?
Well, Jean, I mean, I haven't really kind of looked. I assume
They were intended to replace those two red line
Oh,
paragraphs.
yeah, the wording is very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did think the wording was fine. So is it okay with everyone if Rhonda's two paragraphs replace the first two paragraphs that are now in the executive summary? Everybody's good with that. Okay. Then the other comment was from Emily Cooper, asking about the inclusion of Needham Housing Authority's advocacy agenda in the revised draft. Actually, Karen thought that as a result of this issue having been raised earlier, that the Needham Housing Authority initiatives were moved to a different section to be referred to as further study. Karen, so would you say that that issue
Yeah.
was responded to already in the current draft we have before us?
I had in my notes, and you know, it's been in, it's been out. I had in my notes that we had a discussion and Emily agreed that we could move it for further study, that there wasn't kind of a general acceptance that this is part of our recommendations, but to move it for further study and consideration down the road. So I moved it.
And Emily, did you see that? Or do you
Sure.
need-
Yeah, no, I saw it was moved. I guess I just thought it was gonna be also tailored back, not as specific still. You know, I think we could probably just have the first sentence or whatever that just says, you know, work with them and support their advocacy efforts as needed. I think it gets tricky when we start talking about low-income housing tax credit preferences and bullets about moving to work and, you know, get more specifics. I think it makes it seem that, you know, I think if we keep it sort of just a general statement that, you know, we'll continue to work together and when things align, we'll support their advocacy efforts.
I just want to mention, though, that a lot of those efforts will have an effect potentially on reducing the costs for the NHA projects that will better leverage the town's investments. So that, I think, needs to have some.
I just think that they warrant, they're very controversial and they warrant larger conversation by this group. If you create a preference in the tax credit program for housing authority developments, you are going up against a whole lot of people who are already using those tax credits, including a developer that we might want to come here and develop housing. So, you know, it's not like it's, you know, the pot got bigger and so we're saying we want a slice of the pot. We're saying treat us higher. So I'm just saying that I don't feel comfortable putting something in there unless we talk about it a lot more and what the support is. So that's just my personal opinion.
Is this something that recently was added or something that we've been having there
It
for?
was in, it was out, and then this part, it was put in for a section on further study, and the language was just much reduced. But it, you know, whatever you guys decide.
Well, Karen, could you point us to the pages in
I
question?
don't have the printed copy in front of me. It's
Emily?
72.
Do you have it? What pages?
72,
72?
I want to say.
All right, just want to make sure. I'm
That's
focused.
the Word version, I think.
Okay, there's a bullet point, Needham Housing Authority, on page 71, which just has a general statement about the purpose of the Needham Housing Authority. Then,
No, maybe it's not 72, sorry.
then Needham Community Preservation
So.
Committee is
I thought
mentioned.
it was
would be under
70.
further study, under the housing preservation and housing development preservation section.
And
I'm looking for it.
what, somebody's looking for it?
Yes,
Where-
I will look for it.
Okay. Yeah, because the pages you directed me just said,
Yeah, no, 72 was something else, actually,
yeah, brief
that I
paragraph.
wanted to talk about.
Are you talking about the roadmap, so-called roadmap?
So
No,
it's under, you know, the sections under further study. Future
oh,
study,
wait a
future
minute,
consideration, under housing preservation, housing development preservation.
I think it's page 68.
Thank you.
page 68, okay. Housing development and preservation studies for further study, further consideration, and then it is make enhanced, the bullet points under it, make enhanced home buyer assistance available, support state legislation regarding transfer tax. Then I go on to the next page, consider further property tax reductions for qualifying seniors.
Oh.
No,
That's not what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think part of it is we're seeing different, depending if you're in the Word version or the
It's
PDF.
page
version.
68 in the
Same.
Word version.
It should be the same.
I just printed out what had been originally attached, I think.
Well, I can read you the wording since
Thank
I'm
you.
staring at it. The red line portion says there should also be some consideration to supporting NHA's advocacy agenda that includes a wide range of possible legislative, regulatory, and programmatic opportunities for expediting development and reducing project costs, including public housing redevelopment bill, new low-income housing tax credit preference for public housing preservation and production projects, and higher annual state spending limits for housing initiatives and programs.
I see. Now I see it now. It
Yeah,
is,
it's on page 72 of my version for some
it
reason.
is in red line. So it's that redlining that you just read, that,
We could just end it after project costs, period, and then not have the including in the bullets. I think that would be
all
fine.
right. If that would, I know we rely on your background.
Yeah, that works.
Appreciate it. and just taking out the specific references to
I think
specific
that's great.
programs.
Okay,
Yeah, but I do also want to mention that that's under a bullet point about transfer fees. I think it needs its own bullet point, its own bullet.
well, then we've got to redo the roadmap, and then the first part, is it really worth doing the own bullet and having to reform stuff?
Why
No.
is it hard to put in a new, just a bullet? Is that hard?
No. It's,
Oh, well, all right, if it's hard, forget it, but
I'm
I'm
just-
sorry, I shouldn't have raised it.
Trying to
No,
save
it's
Terry.
It's
not.
just, it just seemed like a non sequitur, that paragraph in that bullet point. All right, then, if that takes care of Emily's concern to eliminate the references, then at this point, with what I think are 3 changes, to add the new introductory language, to add what Oscar provided for text for Appendix 7, and to delete the reference to those particular state programs or state bills. In these changes the staff will make, is it time now to offer for someone to offer a motion to approve the December 2022 housing plan
Emily has her
that is
hand up.
before us tonight with those
Thanks,
changes?
Marcus. Sorry,
Emily's
I do
hand
have
is up,
two-
yeah.
I do have 2 more questions or thoughts.
Oh,
One is
okay.
I did send an email, just being conscious of our person-centered language that we use in the plan. Instead of saying the disabled, using people with disabilities, I would say the same thing about the elderly, older adults. So just if somebody could look through that and with a fine tooth comb. And I do have actually a substantive question, which is we just added a table under what are they, goals and priority housing needs and estimated development goals. And we added a whole section on that. I thought I just wanted to check with everybody, that somebody's going to say, hey, these are the number of units you said you were going to create for these people at this rate, and rental and ownership. So I think we need to just make sure we're okay with it all. And I was wondering if there was a way for the table, that's table 3-4, which I have is on page 31, to be broken out by not just 60% AMI or less, but also by 30% AMI or less. Since that's how it's kind of broken out in the other tables as well, so that they kind of line up. So, sorry.
Do you know, Karen, is it clear to you what's being discussed? This is under housing strategies. Is that,
Emily, can you
It's
say
not
that
under
again about
housing
the?
Yeah,
strategy.
so-
It's
Targets?
under
so
Would
there's
just-
it's under the, priority housing needs.
So there's a
inclusion
whole new
into
section.
3D.
Yeah, 3D, which I have starts at the bottom of page 27. I don't know. It says long-term housing production targets. It's a whole new section. So I just want to make sure
Well-
everybody's okay with it.
It's
Well,
not really a whole new
3D.
section. It
Oh,
incorporates, it separates out some of the tables that we had under priority housing needs.
Okay,
okay,
HA
And then-
suggested that we separate it out and look just at the goals. And
Right.
that's also been reflective of other discussion that the working group has
Yeah.
had about being more precise.
yeah,
the goals.
exactly. And I think it's really helpful. So there's a table there that's table 3-1, which is unmet housing needs, which I know we spent some time thinking about. And in it, it breaks apart people who have incomes 30% AMI, 30 to 50, 50 to 80, which I think is great.
yes,
Then you keep going down and there's a new chart, which is how many units we will need for each of these populations.
Mm,
So that's
mhm.
very specific. So I want to make sure everybody's seen it and we're okay with it. It says we need if I do my totals across 1,020 units, which includes 565 both rental and ownership for people under 30% of the area median income. And then,
Wait. I think if I add this up correctly, this generates a total number of target units for us 2,588 units.
Oh, because you're going across, so the total is 565, 438, 325, 240, and
Yeah, you go,
1,020.
there's no totals column, which would be nice.
There is a
On the-
total for rental plus ownership goals of 1,020 units on the new chart, table 3.2.
Right, but we don't know how many total rental units we need, is what you're saying.
Wait,
across all the
I want to make, can whoever created this chart, please walk us through it, because I'm hearing two different things.
Yeah,
That looks like it's just for greater than 100% AMI at that 1,000. So I'm seeing what Oscar's seeing. I'm going across left to
I'm
right.
going all the way across. There is no
Yeah.
totals anywhere in this chart, as far as I can tell.
Well,
This
All right,
is,
can people see this? I'm sharing the screen.
oh, good, thank you.
You'll see it?
yes,
Yes.
yes, we can see it.
Okay, so there, I think the confusion, because there's a total row here, which so 255
Oh, I
and
see.
320 equal 565.
the totals are just up and down. So the totals
Yeah.
come down to it, and then the totals come up to that middle line, but there's nothing at the right that adds up
Right.
all rental,
So
all ownership.
We can
all
add a
rental.
total. That is not I think a big issue. These are the units where there are on cost burdens.
Yeah, so I think I want to just make sure that what we're saying is that the community needs, I think, however Oscar did the math, 2,000 some odd,
2588.
2588 new housing units.
So
Of
that
which
is-
X
yeah.
amount are rental, X amount are home, of which 565 would be for people under 30% of AMI.
Yeah.
And that's
so,
that's a lot of home ownership, 320 units of home ownership for people under 30% AMI is a very large amount.
Is it
for
still
a
kind of a
very-
working? That's aspirationally, but that's not definitive. Like that can be changed. Is it? I just want to understand that more.
Yeah.
Like at
This is,
320
these
it
are
is-
numbers that are based on unmet housing needs because they have cost burdens.
Mhm.
It is very hard to get to the owners with, cost burdens. That's why we've included that recommendation about revisiting the policies related to tax abatements, exemptions, and deferrals. But it'll be very hard for long-term owners to create housing for them. But this just reflects, it's a suggestion to include this by the NHA and it's a summary table.
I agree, Emily. It seems
Karen?
skewed. It seems
That-
skewed. Yeah.
Let me ask a question of Karen, is the inclusion of this table in this version of the housing plan, is this in response to what was said at our meeting on the 8th about needing to have numerical goals so that we can kind of test how we're doing as we go forward? Was that a response to that statement at our meeting?
This table was offered by the NHA as a summary table of kind of looking at cost burdens and the unmet need. This is kind of the universe based on the data we had so far, of what the need is. Doesn't mean that that's our goal.
But putting
Long-term
it in
production
here,
targets, these would be ideally, but it's gonna, I included it, it's an NHA exam.
But I think we put it in here and now it's sort of as if this is now this is what we're saying we're doing. And that's why I wanted to talk about it and make sure is that what we're saying we're doing?
I think this is a putting this in looks like we're going to just be a total failure. I mean, maybe we'll get, I mean, even 245 units of under 30% is a unbelievable number for the town of Needham. And then adding that another 255 for 30 to 50. I mean, you know how hard those are to get?
Yeah, I agree with that. This is, I think, just looking at the universe of unmet need. I think that we get into the next section, we're back in alignment with what we had been targeting as more reasonable goals, that 80-20 differentiation.
But this doesn't say anywhere on it. It says long time production targets. It doesn't say unmet need says we need these
No,
things.
it should say further up, it's based on
Right,
know,
so this is the unmet
table,
housing needs.
which is unmet housing needs. It's based on that. It's just a different kind of summary table of that table. That's all it is.
So could we leave it as this, that we do understand that we don't want to present this table as representing the goals of the housing plan. It's an if the goal is that net zero, and ask Emily to work with Karen on language that makes it clear that this is a table summing up the needs that
Well,
were previously
so
presented or
I
whatever.
think there is a
Yes.
tape, is this the actual table, Karen?
Yes.
This one, this is what we've said
Yes.
we could do.
Yes, this is the one that we've been discussing.
Okay.
Right, so
The
I guess I
table
would
above
delete
is
the other
just-
one.
I would delete the other one
I
too.
would delete the other
Okay.
one. And
Okay.
my initial question was, can we break this one down and have rows that are under 60% AMI like the other one, under 30%, 30 to 50? Is there a way to make this particular table go a little bit deeper in the affordability rather than just saying 60% AMI or less? Do we have that data?
You know, I'm willing to put something in there. If you have
Because I
some,
think it's helpful to see, are we talking about people 30% AMI or 60%? I mean, that's a big range. And you know, if you're 30% AMI, you need a subsidy. If you're 60%,
well, you need, yeah, you have to have a project-based section.
Right,
8 or
right,
with
so it's a little
right.
bit different, is all I'm saying.
Hmm.
Should I
Okay.
I just want to say, I agree. I think that other chart needs to come out of the report.
I think it sounds like we're all in agreement about that.
Yeah, it was a summary table that just confuses people.
But the one, Karen, that we're focused on now, table 3, 4, is it possible, Karen, do we have the data
It's
to
just-
add what Emily is asking
It's gonna
for?
be just an estimate. It's not gonna be based necessarily. There'll be some percentage of that amount will break down to 30, you know, to 30%. Obviously, you know, we don't have so many section 8s, but I can put something in. If anybody has suggestions, they can do that too.
Are members of, since it seems like some discretion is involved, Karen,
Yeah,
are the members of the Housing Plan Working Group comfortable letting Emily and Karen work that out? Because otherwise we'd have to have.
I think we just removed the table. I mean, I don't know that I need to be involved. That's what I was gonna
Okay,
say.
that we don't really need to make, okay. All right, so what we do is remove the table, table 2.
you
Table.
don't want us to insert
3.
something on 30% AMI?
2. Well,
It looks
think
like
if you
Oscar
have-
and Rhonda have their hand up too.
Go ahead,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry, mine should go down.
I think if
who
you have
has his hand-
something that's valid
Oscar
on
does.
30%
Okay.
AMI, that would be great, but if you don't, then we can leave it.
all right, let's recognize, I think Rhonda, I don't know who had their hand up first. Rhonda, your hand is up.
No, I meant to take it down. Sorry.
Okay, Oscar, your hand is up.
Yes, thanks. I guess the one thing I'm not sure we're going to be able to do this, but I think I'm more in response to the questions and in response to, I guess, a thought that I thought we were all trying to come to, and some way of projecting by extracting the housing needs from the housing data beyond just what is for deeply affordable and affordable housing in the sort of world of NHA. I read this as very targeted affordable housing that, and I guess up to 80% AMI puts it into somewhat of a more market rate or near market rate. But we have unmet needs across a broader spectrum. And I think the question is also beyond just this targeted group of economic ranges, but it's also over 100, over 110. It's the starter homes, you know, it's all the data beyond what we have for quote affordable housing. And I guess it's, it's the 11th hour, 59th minute, and we haven't been able to really create a chart, I guess, or targets that are beyond that, as far as I can tell. And I guess that's something we've said needs to be done. Right. And that's potentially something that's going to require more work, more planning, more projecting of how we're going to accomplish different kinds of housing types to meet the other needs. So I guess that's my own caveat. I guess we're not going to get to the point of having targets for all of across the entire spectrum, right? As far as I can tell, we haven't done that.
Well, the one, a target that the state has set for us is 100, I think, if I'm remembering.
That's a part of it. And I like that concept of coming up with, let's meet a real 10% and gain 436. I like that. But we know that the MBTA is going to is asking for 1,784 units.
Yes.
So at the very least, you'd think we'd have a target that's in that 17, 18, 19, 2000 range over 20 years, but we're not there yet. And so there's a lot more data to grind through and do some analysis of planning. So I guess whether we have to state that or not, I don't know, but what we have created is targets for certain pieces of the picture.
Mhm.
Is that right? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. Do we have language, though, in the plan that speaks of monitoring as we go forward?
Yes. I
I
mean, I
thought
think
we
that's
did
the
have
point.
such language.
We've said that we want to create some form of a housing oversight group, whether it's the Affordable Housing Trust or something else that we come up with, that is going to be responsible for looking at the creation and the production of housing across all of our needs over time. And whether that's a 1-year cycle, 5-year cycle, 10-year cycle on reporting, to be determined. But that agency is not just focusing on 30 to 80% AMI. That group needs to focus on affordable across the entire spectrum of housing. As far as I'm concerned, that would be my mission for a housing trust in town. They need to be responsible for helping create housing of all types. Or at least guiding the development of housing.
I think we're so close to wrapping this up.
I know. I'm not trying to make more work. I'm just trying to clarify what we're trying to do here. And I think
Mhm.
we are. We're
That
establishing some
what we
targets.
have in this summary is limited in that it's talking about what appears to us from our census, what our needs are at the lower income levels. Beyond that, and then we get into the zoning strategies and so forth. We have goals, and I think there are really two, and there's also two other goals that are mentioned. One is to actually achieve 10% affordable units in our developments, which we're short of now. We're about 6.7%. That's one goal, and I think we do articulate that. And the other is to see how we're doing when we achieve the rezonings that are called for by the MBTA Communities Act, and the focus of that is on market rate housing. So, is it good enough now in our plan?
I think we're not going to be able to come up with all of those other targets now. So yes, I think we have to just be mindful of that. And that's the task for the next generation of this plan.
Okay, I've got a list here of the changes we are going to make. Is there anything any other member wants to raise at this time before we go for a vote? All right,
Yes.
it sounds like. Yes,
Marcus has his hand
It
up.
looks like Marcus and Oscar have their hands up.
I'm sorry.
Marcus, yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I think just going along with Oscar's saying is that and being close to the finish line, but I don't want that to be a reason why we don't try to listen to kind of understand what Oscar's saying. And if we can't put that exact language in right now, do we vote with the caveat of potentially having another gathering or something like that to kind of put this in later? Or do you want to just hold it off until the next group that comes in as a part of this to kind of do that for us? So that's what I just
Yeah,
want to kind of understand, because I know being close to the finish line, you just want to wrap it up and be done, but you also want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward. Like, we're thinking of generations to come in over the next 20 years. And if this caveat is something that is, and it seems very much so, worth taking a little bit more time with before possibly signing it and going to the select board, is that something we consider? Or I see Karen and Heidi have their hand up as well.
yeah, I want to ask Karen for a response, and Heidi, of course, but Karen, I'm trying to think of how we could respond
Well,
by saying that you understand what we're looking for. You can add language to the effect.
let me just give you a pragmatic response.
Mhm.
There are subsidies for up to 100% AMI. CPA can go up to 100% AMI. When you start getting into subsidies over that, they become nil, very limited. You're dealing with internal subsidies within buildings, within projects. So it's very hard to kind of, provide breakdowns over 100%, since also we don't have cost burden data based on over 100%. So there is some pragmatic, discussion about how do you create workforce housing for over 100%. And that's tricky. That's not market. So you go from 100%, then you go to market where people who can afford market are earning way above that.
But the point
I
is,
think this deserves further discussion, but it's tricky.
it is, but it's also what completes the picture. Seniors, people with disabilities. We know that there's certain kids that are matriculating through the school system, and so there must be, I'm not
We
saying
do
I
have
can do it,
goals.
but
and-
there are ways that we can look at the data and then start to understand what that projects out to be as a need for these different segments of the population. Starter homes, families coming, wanting to come to town, seniors, what's the range of products that they're looking for, and what kind of pay structure are we falling short of? So it's really the projections of all the other pieces of housing choice that we know we need to create, and that there's some way of working out how you project what that need is, some kind of range over some period of time. All I'm saying is maybe we make, to Marcus's point, we can acknowledge that that is necessary to help give us some tools and some goalposts and create something for us to this process needs to have those targets so that they can be monitored and we can understand how we're accomplishing or not accomplishing goals. So maybe it is something for a next generation of planning study and we just mentioned that that's a need that we need to meet, because clearly people are asking for it. And it's important so we understand what we're shooting for as a
Okay,
town.
I think we could maybe add some language along those lines. What I'm hearing is we need targets that go beyond the affordable, affordable with a capital A, that 80%, 50%, whatever. And we need measurement tools to see if we are reaching those targets. And we don't necessarily have them now. But to just say that that is something that we need I want to recognize Heidi, but I just wanted to respond and say, is that sufficient to respond to?
So on this subject, can I just throw out there that I
Okay.
resist?
Yes, Heidi, please.
I resist the word targets and production targets. I guess I'd be more comfortable with goals. I think the issue for me is that we haven't designated anyone to handle guiding development. So I don't see how we can set goals that we know then that we won't fulfill. So we have discussed at some length having the housing trust be in charge for this, but we haven't adjusted that body's charge. That's something that's on the plate, and we've said needs further study. And I know that for the housing trust is in the works, but we haven't actually made that change yet. Until we have some kind of responsible entity for this project, I don't think it's reasonable to set a target that then we for sure won't meet. But we have no agency in Needham that guides or develops housing.
In the section of the plan that discusses the role of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, could something simply be said about a pot? For
Sure, we can
example,
say anything we want, but until the
possible
charge of
role.
the body is changed, we can't count on that body to develop or guide or monitor.
Mhm.
So I
we
think
either-
just
we
throwing it
either leave-
out there is kind of a red herring.
We sort of either leave it as we have it. And as I recall, there's a lot of language about what our needs are. And that go beyond. There are not numerical targets, I'll agree, but there certainly is language in the plan that goes beyond the need for capital A affordable housing. And we talk about our young adults, we talk about disabled young adults, we talk about seniors and their needs. There's a lot in the plan about that. And so truly what's missing is numerical targets. But are we content with that for now in this plan?
I'm fine with the unmet need, the calculation of unmet need.
Mhm.
But I just, and even we could state it as a goal. I just think that when you make it a production target, that sounds much more like an implementable plan, and we don't have anyone to implement it.
I just want to make sure I understand you, Heidi. Is there some additional wording in the plan? that
No, but
you would
I
like to
agree
see?
with the idea of getting rid of that table that talks about production goals. I think it's unrealistic. I mean, aspirational and not wrong, just
Are we
not
talking
implementable.
about table?
this
Me
the
too.
table that Emily objected to, but I'm talking about this whole idea of
The one
production
that
target.
we already said we'll get rid of, or an additional table?
No, the same table, but just the idea that we're creating a target, I think is beyond the scope of what we can do here.
Okay, so we are getting rid of that. So, but you're not recommending some additional wording somewhere else. It's okay just to get rid of that. All right, Rhonda?
Listening to everybody, I'm agreeing with I agree just with what Heidi just said. I mean, it almost sounds to me like we need a letter, potentially, Jean, from you, that starts this whole production plan out and identifies the limitations that we have, which is that there is no entity to implement this right now, that we can't really quantify the issues with the moderate income housing in the town because it's unquantifiable, and that any kind of action that we have is limited by the fact that subsidies are for people under between under 80, under 100% of area median income. I mean, these are all really good points that are things that we're sort of saying, these are caveats, and Marcus and and Oscar, the comments are all right. Like there's nothing, they're all good points, and they're all limitations on what we could do in the last 15 months. And I just wonder if there's not a benefit to having somebody draft a letter that outlines the limitations of what we could do. The fact that there's no body to hand this off to, that we're very concerned, that we're hoping that we can make it lovely. The selectmen are doing X, Y, and Z to begin to create a group that will do this. And we're hoping to hand this to them. They've participated in this, 2 members of the select board have participated, and their goal is to come up with something that will, there's just no reason to leave it unsaid.
All right, I have an idea of some people. I don't think we're thinking about something that I would draft that would be added to the plan, but I'm thinking of the role that I would play as a member of the planning board, who was also a
Right.
member of this group, and Natasha also would play. And I'd like to actually make it a little bit of a group project here with Natasha and me, that to wrap up the work of the housing plan, we will prepare a letter to the select board and the planning board saying the housing plan has been approved. Now we are asking for you to approve it. We want to say, however, that and say some of the things that have been said at tonight's meeting about that the plan doesn't necessarily set numerical goals, that presently the plan does recommend, and it might be worth mentioning in such a transmittal letter, does recommend focusing on the role of the affordable housing trust in our town. If I drafted such a letter, or Natasha and I worked on such a letter, are you satisfied to trust us to do that so that this group does not have to have another meeting to approve any such transmittal letter?
I would trust you. I just like to see the letter before it gets sent.
And I think we have two select board people here that you probably want to make sure that, I just think there's no reason that we wouldn't want to all agree that we're asked, that they want to be asked what you're asking them of them.
Yeah, can I just inquire, I know we all want to finish this work, but like, is there a deadline? Why are we rushing so much?
Will you address that, Lee?
Well, Heidi, I think the goal was to actually get this done by the end of this year.
Yeah.
And to get the plan approved by the select board and the planning board, because we're going to be moving forward with, being responsive to the MBTA requirements. And we're looking forward to, presenting an action plan at the end of January. And one of the questions they ask you is, do you have an effectively an affordable housing plan? And I'd like to be able to answer that in the affirmative. So I think the goal was to get this work done, get the plan complete, and let it serve as the foundation going forward for the housing trust and for addressing the future work the town has to do around the MBTA guidelines compliance.
And also, I'd like to add that part of this is Jean and I were designated to work on this plan, but we need to bring it back to the planning board and say, this is the final plan. And then start talking about, next steps, which is part of what this letter would be, right? Is it, because there are things that the planning board, that the select board will need to review and approve and work with us on, but there are things that the planning board also has to do regarding ADUs and all of that. So I think that the good question here is, how do we become accountable for this work, and how is it moving forward? Knowing that there are some pieces that are still not figured out, as you all mentioned, as I was listening to all of you saying that there are holes in all of this because there are pieces that are not in place. So it's kind of working together to figure out how do we create a plan moving forward, and who's carrying that plan, and which aspects of it are within which board, which purview, and what's missing, which areas are not really kind of led by anyone, and we need to figure out where those pieces stand.
So if we prepare such a letter to the two boards, which I think is appropriate, is it possible that we could have a quick meeting after New Year's to present that letter to you and say, does this look okay? Is that what people are asking for, or alternatively, we'll wrap this up? I would like to wrap up the plan tonight, the plan right here, and get a vote to approve it. But if the caveat is that we don't discontinue the work of this committee right now, we do need one more meeting. to discuss further steps. And
Jean,
what people
Helen has her
want?
hand up.
is that what people want? Who has it? Oh,
I do,
Helen.
yes,
Helen.
I do, but I have 2 quick points regarding the actual plan, so I feel like perhaps we need to address Jean's point and then I can make 2 quick points in the
Sure.
plan.
Yes, please, Helen.
Or, okay, I'll go ahead now. So related to the point about the Affordable Housing Trust, I am looking at page 2 on the PDF, the actual Needham Housing Plan, page 2 in the footer. So it's actually page 5 in the PDF, but under capacity building strategies, bullet number 2, where it says monitor targeted housing goals. The second line says with respect to the implementation of this plan by the Affordable Housing Trust. So I think right there, if we could just take out by the Affordable Housing Trust, we're just talking about implementation of this plan, but we need to remove by the Affordable Housing Trust.
Because that hasn't, although that.
Unless
Well,
I'm misreading that.
Those who served on the capacity, did you serve on the capacity building group, Helen? No.
I did not.
I actually like to have a response from the capacity working group on removing that reference to the, it would say, if the reference is removed, it will say monitor targeted housing goals and the subsidized housing inventory by annually monitoring progress with respect to the implementation of this plan, including targeted production goals with staff support from the Department of Planning and Community Development. It would not mention the Affordable Housing Trust.
I mean, I may be misinterpreting, so thank you for questioning that.
Yeah,
I think it was not explained that later on we talk about the possibility that the Affordable Housing Trust becomes that body. This is assuming that it's already in place as a new entity.
Right.
So either you explain that you explain it or you take it out. Either way, we could do a footnote here that refers to where we describe what the Affordable Housing Trust could become. Or we just take it out as Jean suggested. So I could go
well,
either way.
as
Or
Helen
we could say this could be
Yeah.
a possible, this could be, there could be a possibility that the housing trust could do this work, right?
Yeah,
But
you
not
could
say
have a
that, not
central-
say that they're in charge because they're not in charge yet, or
Yeah.
Right.
or may never be, or maybe,
So either just take out the Affordable Housing Trust or
What page are we
or
on?
add a
It's page
caveat, like
2.
possibly
I would
by,
add a caveat, because if you get rid of it, then it'll be lost. But if you add a caveat and say it's not currently done, but it could be a possibility or something like that, then you don't lose that information.
so add a caveat that such monitoring could perhaps even make it weaker, be performed by the Affordable Housing Trust. Then maybe actually a footnote referring, or even in the text referring to the later section of the
Yes,
plan that describes the Affordable Housing Trust at great length.
in a new, with a new charter.
Add
Yes.
reference. All right, is that
And
okay? Does
this-
that respond, Helen?
Thank you. That sounds good.
All
And
right,
then the other detail that I just wanted to check in with folks about is 3 bullet points above that. So just above the capacity building strategies on page 2, there's a couple, the bullet point that says renovate, replace the Stephen Palmer property. The last line of that says, making sure to respond to the needs of existing tenants. And it's talking about,
Mhm.
examining the property's potential for maximizing its reuse for affordable and or moderate rate housing when the lease expires, making sure to respond to the needs of existing tenants. I don't disagree with that. I do think we're getting really deep and sort of dictating. I mean, I would be inclined to make it a little more general, such as with consideration to the existing tenants. I just think responding to the needs of the existing tenants is a pretty high expectation, and I don't know what that means, but.
So with consideration of the needs of existing tenants. I think you use that language is a bit,
Consideration to the
not
notes.
directive and not ordering. Is that right?
I think
Helen?
that would feel more comfortable to me.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, I'm making a list, so to make sure we don't miss anything of these changes. Now it's getting, my list is getting so long that I need a highlighter. All right, all right. Let's see, and the Affordable Housing Trust, to remove that. Emery, and the reference to Emery Grover. Okay. Are there any other issues? And then I'll try to summarize where we are.
I have one other thought. I can't figure out, I can't find where it was. I didn't really have enough chance to go through the whole thing today. But where we talk about the ADUs again, I'm just wondering if we can add language about it being prioritized for people with low or moderate income and not, I really do worry that if, you know, that just opening it up, that it could become more luxury housing. I know there's other limits, but I think it would be good for this group to emphasize the fact that we want to open up the idea of ADUs for to create additional housing that is for people with different incomes, not high incomes.
If you let me respond to that, that really is a substantive issue, of course. I'm aware of the history of Cape Cod towns adopting accessory dwelling units, but allowing them only for people at or below certain incomes. The result was there were no applications. So it did not result in any accessory dwelling units. I think our focus might be, and I think we say this in the paragraph about accessory dwelling units, that these units, they're small, they're likely to be relatively low rent, will meet a need. And the fact that people, presumably seniors, but not necessarily, will be able to rent out these units and get some income to help with their housing costs is helping the homeowner too, who might be low income. But to actually require that it can only be rented to persons below 80% of the median income, or even
I would be if it was
that,
below 120%.
that is a tricky thing to do. It really is.
I guess I just, you know, I continue to worry that somehow people are going to figure out ways to make it 2-family luxury houses. You know, that they're going to figure out a way to. I just feel people are very creative when you're in a wealthy town where property is so expensive. That's
Can
my
I just
fear.
can I just respond to that, Rhonda? Maybe
Yeah.
what we could do is have some kind of an incentive, so that if people do choose to market their units at a lower price, that they get a tax deduction or they get some kind of other benefit for their property. Because if you don't, I think I agree with Jean that if you put handcuffs on this, they are by nature small and going to be good for people of, you know, either downsizing, upsizing. But I'm just wondering, I like the idea, but I just wonder if there's another way to do it so that there's
I'm open to ideas. I just really worry in this town that the contractors, you know, it's just people come in and they're very creative.
Yeah, I'd also argue that we should push more to get 2-bed out of the 850. Our first apartment was 850 and it was 2-bed. So there's no question you can't get 2 beds out of that size. And that actually is has even more flexibility for people. So,
well, if you allowed 2 bedrooms and you upped it to 900 square feet, would you want to only allow 2 bedrooms if the unit were rented to a low income person, whereas otherwise?
I don't think we need to decide any of this. I'm not suggesting it.
right.
I wasn't trying to get into all these details. I was just suggesting maybe we wanted to add language that we wanted to focus on the idea that it would be adding to the opportunities for low and moderate income people, but that's up to everyone else. It's fine.
I actually think we have that language.
It adds a whole layer of enforcement, determining eligibility, the whole administrative thing
Yeah.
about, we do not want to get in the business. of
No,
things verifying.
you're
income.
saying we don't want to get into
No.
measuring, requiring income limits. But Karen, in response to the statement I just made, with regard to Rhonda's wish that our section on accessory dwelling units note that this creates an opportunity for lower income people
Yeah.
to rent in our town. Don't we already have that language?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
That was not actually, but that's fine. I get the concern. I just, like I said,
Okay. Or so we're okay with
I
it.
never underestimate the power, the creativity of people who want to find a way to make it lucrative.
Well, one thing, well, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but maybe we can talk later on.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
All right. At this point, if I recite what I think the changes are that we all agreed to, I'll recite those changes and then I'll ask for a motion to approve the plan subject to these changes being made. So the paragraph on gosh, what I wrote is Needham Housing Authority moved to further study, but that's not actually what the decision was. It was
to shorten that section to just end and not have the bullets, and where it said blah, 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 including, and then bullets. We just ended it before the including.
yeah, I have notes on that from. the
all
minutes
right.
taken.
Okay, so all right, we have notes on that, and it has to do with eliminating bullet points after
Yeah.
the section. And then adding the or substituting the introductory paragraphs that Rhonda prepared, sent, adding the wording pages to Appendix 7 that has our maps. Then asking that a letter be drafted to transmit the approved the approved housing plan to the select board and the planning board, and that letter be shared with the housing plan working group and approved before it goes out. And that the table that we would delete the table that's presently redlined that seemed to set targets, but we will add to table 3-2 in response to Emily's suggestion that we add to table 3-2.
It's 3-4, actually, the one that Emily wants to adjust to 30% AMI.
Yeah, to 30% AMI, right?
That's table 3-4. We're removing table 3-2.
Oh, so removing 2 and okay. I very much appreciate this help here. I think that is it as far as the changes we're going to make.
No, there was the people-centered language that Emily.
Oh, excuse me. Wording, that's what I meant by the word. I had the word wording in quotes. And we will trust Karen to go through the plan and make those appropriate changes. All right. So with those changes, is there a motion to approve the December 2022 housing plan that is before us tonight?
So moved.
So I have a motion by Natasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Ed Cosgrove. So no, I will go around and call for a vote.
Can I just clarify, Jean? We are going to see the letter before it is complete.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that is correct. the plan will not be transmitted without a letter that this committee has approved. And we will not lay down this committee tonight. This committee will continue until we are satisfied with that letter. Right? So, Heidi Frail,
Yes.
Oscar Mertz,
Yes.
Ed Cosgrove,
Yes.
Michael O'Brien,
Yes.
Emily Cooper,
Yes.
Rhonda Spector,
Yes.
Helen Gregory,
Yes.
Natasha Espada,
Yes.
Marcus Nelson.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so pleased that we have approval of this plan that everyone worked so hard on, especially those that were in the subgroups. And it's been a labor of love, and I appreciate it so much. So I think one thing we need to think about is this concept of having the committee approve this letter. It seems that we would need a meeting to do that. I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like a violation of the open meeting law to just do it by email. I wonder if we could set a quick meeting the week after the holiday week. So Lee, is there a day that or an evening that you suggest that's free for you?
I had a quick question. What if, as far as with the letters, if we're given kind of a deadline to respond, if there were edits or anything that you wanted to make, and we ended this meeting with like the caveat of those things are due by this date, and that information is put in, and then
That's
we
a
can
good idea.
have that be the final instead of getting together for another meeting. And I don't know if that's okay, but I feel like I know my schedule is just getting a little bit more crazy, and I feel like that might be a little bit easier for everyone to have like a due date to get it in, and it'll come up with and all the edits that need to be made. That could be maybe a back and forth conversation with between just Natasha and Eugene and whoever is asking to do edits, and then that could be submitted.
Natasha and I will do the drafting. We'll send it out. We'll ask for comments by a certain date. I'm just a little troubled by doing all this without any kind of final meeting, and doing it all by email.
Lee, do you think we need a meeting for this, or can we do this letter?
Yeah, what do you think, Lee?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I think if the letter is really substantive, I mean, I think maybe people could communicate with Jean or through staff what they want in the letter, and we could then put together a letter. I think it's difficult to be approving it outside of an open meeting if this group doesn't today know what they want in the letter. If this group today wanted to articulate what it is they're looking to have in that letter, and then it was drafted and it was kind of a implementation of what was decided today, I think we could do it outside of a meeting. But to the extent that you're going to be talking about new things that you want to put in this letter, I think it really needs to be codified formally.
So what I understood from what was said earlier is that we would use the letter just for the purpose of transmitting the plan and saying it was approved. And we hope that it will have your approval to the two boards. But to speak of the fact that presently we don't have in place a department of the town or a board whose role is to measure progress. And that's something that we should be thinking about as we go forward. Is that the gist of it?
That's as I understand.
Uh-huh. Well, if that's what people want. I mean, I think we can prepare a draft along those lines. And, you know, it's very timely and actually very pertinent because you know, the League of Women Voters is having a study of the role of the Affordable Housing Trust. And there is some movement toward thinking of the Affordable Housing Trust as having a more important role in our town. And this letter is just another way of urging in that direction. So if that's the concept, I'll put together the letter and we'll.
In that case, I think it can just be circulated and people can comment on it and it can go out without a meeting because you've articulated the purpose of the letter and you're just implementing it.
Very goodly. And any comments as far as wording goes can be directed to Lee Newman, so it doesn't appear that we're communicating outside a meeting. And then with Heidi and I being co-chairs and also the drafters of the letter, of course, then Lee will share with us.
So as a matter of protocol, you would do the letter, you'll circulate a Word document, and then we can all use track changes and copy everybody. I mean, it could take a bunch of iterations probably, but is that okay with everybody as a concept?
The letter will be sent out in Word form. Anybody who wants to comment or suggest a change or an addition that is along the same lines as what we just talked about, would send that to our staff. Our staff would make the changes, send it out again. And you know, I don't know if there'd be a couple of iterations sent out, but I think, was it Marcus said we need to have a deadline here for comments? So, gosh, Heidi and I will have to put this together pretty quickly. Do you want to set a deadline for ourselves for Wednesday of the week after the New Year's?
You mean Natasha, I assume, yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Oh, I meant
yeah, that's okay. Well, I was like, maybe it's the, you know, yeah, we can talk about it, Jean. We
That will
can
be
send
the
out an email
10th.
that tells everybody what the.
Is that too? No, wait a minute. That's not the 10th. It's the 3rd. Right, Wednesday is the 3rd.
Wednesday's
January
the
4th would
4th.
be the 3rd.
What's that?
January 4th.
Wednesday's
It's
the 4th.
Wednesday.
January 4th is the Wednesday. Okay,
Don't we have a planning board meeting on the 3rd?
we do.
Yes.
Yeah. So finalize the letter by January 4th and give people, would seem, is end of the week enough time, Friday, 6th to respond? And then the redraft goes out the beginning of the next week. Or do we, I mean, if we have to move it up, you know, forward so that
I'm
it's,
out next week, so it's hard for me. I know a lot of people are also out. When they get
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
it's a little crazy, so.
all right. So does that work, Lee, if we get this letter, try to pull this letter together that week?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, so we'll set in you know, an email or message will go out to everyone reminding us of the fact that we're hoping to get this out by the 4th and get comments back by the 6th. All right, job done. Hey, everybody have a good holidays. It's still Hanukkah. And then Christmas will be right behind. All right, happy holidays.
Congratulations, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Congrats.
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Bye.
Jean, I'm going to be calling you shortly on another issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I mean tonight, okay.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.